Have you ever fancied gaining experience in public speaking but thought, oh, I couldn't do that? Well, why not? One group of youngsters gathered in the Scottish Parliament to prove that barriers can be broken.
Good morning, everyone. That's good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken McIntosh, and I'm the presiding officer here at the Scottish Parliament. And it's a real pleasure for me to invite you all, to welcome you all here, I should say, to this. This is the members' room here at Holyrood, to the finale of the Sound of Vision event. And I'd like to offer a particularly warm welcome to our four speakers and to all their friends and family who've come along to lend your support. I know that that will be hugely welcome. And I think some of you made a very early start this morning, so thank you indeed for all of us for the support and encouragement you're giving the speakers this morning. Now, today's event marks the culmination of an 8-week course developed by Stephen Sutherland, who we will hear from very shortly. And the aim of the course is to provide the necessary skills to build the confidence for visually impaired young people for effective public speaking. Now, as you might imagine, as a politician, one of 129 here at the Scottish Parliament, I can confirm that public speaking is... oh, yes. That's also very much part of our daily routine. It's part of our daily life. But what I would say is, don't imagine that it is a skill which comes easily or naturally. I think it's something that most of us have to work at and to practice. And yes, there are some natural and some very gifted orators here in the Scottish Parliament. There are many others, of course, who just like the sound of their own voice, which is not quite the same thing. But the point I would make is that for most of us, it's not a skill that comes naturally and we have to work at it. But because it matters, we do work at getting our message across effectively. And I would actually go one step further. I know colleagues who are actually incredibly shy or nervous about speaking in public, but they fight to overcome their worries and their inhibitions because it matters. And I say to you, as I would say to them, don't worry if you're a little nervous, because it shows that you care about what you are saying. So Asif, Laura, Matthew and Michelle, congratulations on completing the course, because by doing so, you've already shown that what you say matters. And I want to say a particular word of thanks, if I may, to Stephen Sutherland. He was the one, with support from the Royal National Institute of Blind People, the Glasgow Speakers Club, Glasgow City Council and the US Embassy in London, who was the driving force behind this course and who took the initiative in asking if we could hold this event here in Holyrood. My congratulations to him and to everyone involved from all the partner organisations for their efforts in making today's event possible. A little later on this morning, we'll be hearing from Grace Hendry Nash of the Glasgow Speakers Club, from Sandra Wilson, Chair of the RNIB, from my parliamentary colleague Anas Sarwar, who I believe some of you will know because he's already given of his time to share some of his insights in public speaking. And I'm particularly pleased to announce we're joined this morning by the Scottish Government's Minister for Mental Health, Claire Hawkey, MSP, who has not only given up her valuable time to join us this morning and to listen to all the contributions, but has also generously agreed to hand out the awards a little later on. So after we hear from all our speakers, I'd also like to invite all of you to join me in the debating chamber, where you can actually ask questions and sit in the chairs. Oh, there's some people nodding already. Hope you haven't got any difficult questions. I'm a master at choosing the questions, but not at answering them. That's for Claire and Anas. And a final note. After leaving the chamber, I would encourage all our predominantly fully sighted visitors here today to try on a pair of SIM specs, kindly supplied by the RNIB, which are on display at the back of this room. Like many people, my perception of sight loss was that it involved darkness or blurred vision, but as you will notice from trying on the SIM specs, that isn't necessarily the case. And RNIB staff will be on hand to explain the different sight-threatening conditions which can affect the eye and the transmission of information between the eye and the brain. So please do give them a try. It truly is a unique and interactive way to experience the different types of sight loss. So now, I know our 4 speakers are keen to make a start, so can I once again welcome you to your Parliament, and can I now invite Stephen Sutherland to make his way to the lectern. Stephen.
Good morning, Presiding Officer. Thank you for opening this event, and thank you for that very kind introduction. Good morning, everybody. Wow. What a fantastic turnout we have for this event. It's great to see so many people supporting our young speakers here today. Although, standing here, I actually can't see any of you, which I suppose is a good thing. The purpose of this event, ladies and gentlemen, is to give the young speakers the opportunity to present to you a speech that they've been working on for the past few months under the guidance of the Glasgow Speakers Club. Every speech that you're about to hear has a topic that's important to the young person, and it will be related to sight loss. Just before we get on to the young speakers, I'd like just to say that this whole project came about by the United States Embassy in collaboration with Legacy International, who created the event to mark the first anniversary of the death of Joe Cox, who was killed in 2016 on her way to meet with her constituents. I was lucky enough to be one out of 20 out of around 400 applicants in the UK to be selected for this programme. I was invited along to Washington DC, Philadelphia, New York, and a brief spell in Baltimore. The aim was to meet with many different organisations up and down the east coast of America. Every organisation helped promote social cohesion and fight against hate crime. Some of the organisations that I visit would help people with disabilities. Some would fight against racism. Some would fight against gun crime, and some would help promote safe environments in schools and against bullying. So there was a lot of different organisations that we managed to visit, and they all do some fantastic work. However, there's always a catch, because there is no such thing as a free lunch. I was also asked to create my own project as part of this entire project. So during my time in America, I thought about the people I work with most, which is the young speakers who we have to the left, and many other visually impaired people. And I thought about what can I do that can help them, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And I thought about public speaking. The reason why is because this builds confidence in the young speakers and in the young visually impaired people. Not just in public speaking, but it builds confidence when they go for a job interview, which for me, I think is crucial, because there are far too many visually impaired people who are not in work. I don't know if that's down to discrimination or to lack of accessible opportunities, but we need to do more to get in people who are visually impaired into work. I also thought that this would be a good way to increase self-esteem and hope that it will reduce the possibility of mental health problems developing because of their disability. And it's also about raising awareness. Raising awareness is exactly what we're doing now, and it's exactly what RNIB do a lot of. I can say for certain that it's raised awareness with the Glasgow Speakers Club over the past few months. So I came back from my 2 weeks in America, and I got in touch with James Adams, who's the director for RNIB in Scotland. And James was really, really keen on the project and decided that he would help me throughout this. So he got me in touch with the Glasgow Speakers Club, and that's when I first met with Grace Henry Nash. Grace, like James, was really keen on the project and decided to put a team together who would then become the trainers, and they developed the 8-week programme. During the early stages of developing this project, I was made aware that I could apply for funding from the United States Embassy in London. I was competing against the other 19 young people who went to America with me. And I'm delighted to say that I was chosen to receive $3,000, which is equivalent to £2,600. And that's pre-Brexit exchange rates. During the 8-week course, the young speakers learned 3 key skills in public speaking. First, how to keep to time with their speech. Second, how to project their voice so that they could be heard. And third, how to speak slowly so that they can be understood. Which is quite ironic, really, because I'm constantly being told not to speak so fast and to speak up. I hear the word "what" more times than any other word throughout the day. I also had the idea of creating the final event for 2 reasons. I wanted to give the young speakers a reward for all the hard work that they've did over the past few months and for showing myself, RNIB and the Glasgow Speakers Club their commitment. And I also thought that it'd be a good way for them to use the skills that they have recently developed. So this made me think about my time as an MSYP, which is a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament, and how I had the opportunity to speak in the debating chamber, which you will visit soon. And that's when it hit me. Yes, Scottish Parliament. Let's see if I can have the event there. And so I had written to the presiding officer, explaining my project, and he too was very keen on my idea. So he allowed me to work on this project and put me in touch with Douglas Miller, who's the events manager here in the Scottish Parliament. And Douglas, Susan Byrne, who's the Connect facilitator for the West of Scotland with RNIB, and Grace have all been helping me put together today's event for the last few months. And each and every one of them have been superb. They really have been fantastic. I think we've inundated every single email that we could, particularly mine. I'm never off my phone. I'd like to conclude by 3 more points. I hope that you enjoy the speeches that you're about to hear from the young speakers. And that in the future, when you see visually impaired people out in your communities, whether it be at work, in the streets, restaurants, wherever, that you remember what you're about to hear from the young speakers, and that you're more mindful of what it's like to actually live every day with sight loss. Presiding officer, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to provide you with an insight of what it's like to have little or no sight. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. Can I just say that your achievement so far is nothing short of inspirational. It's fantastic what you've achieved. And this event this morning, you should take huge pride, I think, in having put this together and made this happen. So I would thank you very much before we've even started what you've done. However, I notice you've already picked up some bad habits. You mentioned Brexit in your first... I was hoping this would be a Brexit-free morning. We haven't even got through one speech. But thank you very much for that. And now, in fact, sorry, there is one other thing I want to mention. I introduced my 2 colleagues, Anas Sarwar and Minister Claire Hawkey, but I've also spotted another MSP colleague, Gordon Lyndhurst. Thank you very much, Gordon, for coming along. And I should also welcome Councillor Kane, who I also know is here from Glasgow, so thank you very much, elected representatives all. And now we are going to hear from our 4 contributors this morning. So if I may, first of all, introduce Asif Khan. Asif is from Glasgow, and he includes running and judo as some of his interests, and he's currently a blue belt in judo. So I think I'm going to ask Grace to help him up in case he throws me over his shoulder. Asif.
Good morning, Presiding Officer and ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to very happy to see so many people. Well, can't see you, you know what I mean? But first of all, I want to thank Stephen to give me this opportunity to come along and to talk about my life when I was a kid. English is not my first language, so please bear with me. I will try my best to express my point of view. My name is Asif Ali Khan, and today I'm going to talk to you about my childhood. I'm going to talk to you about how was my life before I lost my sight. Then I'm going to talk to you about when I lost my sight, how was that affecting my life and how the people interaction would change. And finally, I'm going to talk to you about when I came to the United Kingdom, what the challenges I faced to and I overcome. So now as a kid in Pakistan, from birth, I was partially sighted. I could see things, but I used to use glasses. But every 6 months, I used to go to my eye specialist just to see if my sight is getting better or is getting worse. But I was really active from a young age, and I used to love play cricket in Pakistan. Beside my house was a wee stream was running, and beside that stream was trees and grass was growing, and different color flowers. And I'm really, when I think about it now, to have that picture in my mind, it makes me happy because I have that memory in my mind. Also, like I said, I used to play cricket with my friend. Beside my house was a wee field, and we used to play cricket with my friend quite a lot. I enjoyed it very much. And sometimes we used to play hide and seek. And those days in Pakistan, people no used to lock doors, the front doors. So sometimes we've been chased by the neighbors, or we've been found out by our friends. But the life was good. It was freedom, and I enjoyed so much. And my friend used to go to school. And I also went to school 1 year in Pakistan. But because of the lack of facilities for disabled people, for me, it was not possible to keep up my education in Pakistan. One day, my teacher told me that you can't come to school anymore. And that age, I was like, yeah, no school, man. I just gonna enjoy myself. But I never realized how important education is. But I make myself useful in local community when I was in Pakistan. I used to bring messages for neighbors or make useful myself otherwise. Like I said, I used to go to my eye specialist to check my eyes. My dad used to take me to a different city called Sawabi. And for me to go to that city, I was looking forward to my dad gonna buy me something special. I mean, I was when I was a kid. I wanted to just enjoy life and just go out. I was not really serious about my sight, like just gonna go and check my eye and I will be okay. So when I go with my dad that day to a different city in Sawabi, the city have amazing sounds, amazing thing to smell, like pakora and samosa. The life was so good. The city was really dusty, and I can hear different kind of noise, like horse running, and different. I make the city so alive. But anyway, when I went to my eye specialist, he told my dad, we can't guarantee you, but your son will lose sight. It could be a year, it could be a month, or it could be a week. But one day gonna come, he will lose his sight. But like I said, I was only a kid, wanted to play about with my friend, just to enjoy my life. But my family was trying to prepare for that day. But I was just want to enjoy. But that day was no long to come. That day came, and I lost my sight. It's like somebody drew a curtain. Suddenly you just go dark. I said to myself, I have to depend on my family. I lost my independence. I can't run about anymore. When I lost my sight, I was 8 years old. But one day, my uncle came to my house and he told my mom and my dad, he said, I want to take Asif to the United Kingdom. for a better life and a better treatment. Of course, my mom was up for the offer. She gave him permission because she thought, I want to see my son can see again. Any mother will want that. When I came to the United Kingdom, I was 12 years old, and I felt I'm an alien in a different world. I couldn't understand the language of this country, and I couldn't understand the culture. So for me, it was really difficult to get through this big barrier. And my social worker came to my house in Glasgow. They said to me, you have to go to school. Bear in mind, in Pakistan, the elders told me you can't go to school because you're blind, you lost your sight. So was I gonna argue with my social worker? I said, how can a blind person go to school? He's blind, he can't even see. They said, we can support you. But I agreed finally then, went to Shoreland Academy School. That was another challenge for me to get through this. With the help of the teacher and the carer and my social worker, I achieved many skills, communication skills, and computer skills. And Braille was another language to me as well. Never felt of Braille before, and I never seen Braille before. But I think every one of this room have ambition or dream to achieve, but sometimes we don't know how to achieve that and how to bring that dream to reality. We have to approach the right people and get the right help from where we're going to bring this dream to reality. So today, finally, I'm going to finish with this sentence. I know we are independent, and I know in Scotland there is a lot of facilities available, but it's not enough. We want you to help us, to give us more opportunity and education placement and work placement, because there's lack of facilities. I know there's a lot, but it's still not enough, I think. And I want we work together and to make better life for ourselves and for other people. Thank you.
Asif, thank you very much. Not just for sharing your story, but actually for giving us a lesson in how to tell a story. Thank you indeed. We will now hear from Laura Cluxton. Originally from Aberdeen and now living in Clackmannanshire, Laura is a director on the board of the Forth Valley Sensory Centre and, like Asif, is involved in sports and trains as an athlete. Laura.
Good morning, Presiding Officer, ladies, gentlemen, and guide dogs. Today, I'd like to speak to you about my journey into cycling. But before I begin, I'd like to answer some frequently asked questions that I get. So firstly, people probably are sitting here looking at me and looking at the guide dog thinking, how on earth can she cycle a bike? Well, the answer is I ride on a tandem. So then the next question that I get when I tell people this is, oh, right, so where do you sit? Do you sit on the front or do you sit on the back? I'm not even going to answer that one. So next I get, so the person on the front, what's wrong with them? Well, no, there's nothing wrong with them. And do they pedal or do they just steer the bike? No. So now I've got this cleared up, I'd like to start my talk. So I started cycling in 2010. I got an opportunity to ride on a tandem. I hadn't been able to ride a bike for quite some time due to my sight loss. So the moment I did it, I loved it. It was great. It just felt like freedom again. So me and my husband, we decided we'd buy a tandem, and we started going out on our bike, getting further and further, more and more miles, becoming a wee bit fitter every time. So at this time, I really was just a fair weather cyclist. We used to go take a picnic, have a great time. But this wasn't enough, and I wanted to go further and faster. My bike wasn't fast enough. So we had to buy a new tandem. So we got that, and it was faster, it was great. And again, I still wanted more. So I started going to races. I wanted to do time trialling, and that was a real buzz. Then after that, I still wasn't satisfied. So I thought, I really want to try track cycling. And, well, we all know the most famous sports person to come out of Edinburgh is Sir Chris Hoy. Luckily, they built a velodrome for him in Glasgow. So I started going, firstly I phoned up the velodrome to ask about cycling, tandem riding. Oh yeah, we've got tandems here, we've got 7 tandems. Oh, brilliant, that's great. How do I go about hiring one and getting on a session? Oh, we don't really know about that, no one's ever used them. So there's lots of humming and hawing, and eventually they got me on a session so that I was able to do an accreditation to make sure that I was safe to ride on the track. So after that, it wasn't a problem. I was going back and forwards. And again, I wanted to compete. So I entered into the British National Championships for my first track competition. And I think it's fair to say at that point I'd caught the cycling bug. So next, luckily, Scottish Cycling had sort of noticed me, and they'd invited me along to come and join in their Scottish Cycling squad sessions with a view to be part of the team. So I jumped at the chance, and I went along for a month, and luckily they asked me to become officially a member of the performance squad. I was absolutely over the moon, and I was very proud to wear my national kit for Scotland. So now I'm paired up with a permanent pilot, and our aim is to achieve some qualification times for the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow 2014. So we worked extremely hard because the bar was set really high, but luckily we managed to do it. We were well within the time. So at this point in my life, I could possibly be chosen to go to a major games. But before this, the squad was taken out in a training camp to Mallorca, and unfortunately I was involved in a crash, fell off the bike, and I broke my collarbone. So this was a massive blow, and I was off the tandem for 3 months. I had to do lots of training on a static bike, which was very frustrating. Anyway, after that, the day came for selection. Luckily, absolutely over the moon to be selected to be part of Team Scotland. So we all had to go, the whole of Team Scotland went to the velodrome for a press day. We got lots of pictures taken, loads and loads of kit, bags of it. And it was just fantastic. And then the next stage was, in July, we were to move into the athletes' village, which was built right next door to the velodrome. The village was unbelievable. We all traipsed in. We'd all been taken in like VIPs in these cars with blacked out windows, wheeling our Team Scotland suitcases, walking into what our street was called Scotland Street. We had the Scotland flags flying in the street. We had the best street. And in the village, the atmosphere was great. We had so many different people from all over the world, lots of very well-known athletes. We had the likes of Bradley Wiggins, Usain Bolt, and even our very own Katie Archibald. We also got a visit from Wills and Kate. But I think the biggest superstar in the village was Guide Dog Pixie. She was, in fact, the only dog in the village. So the day came, the big day. Me and my pilot, we arrived at the velodrome, walked in. The atmosphere was electric. The crowd was packed out. The noise was unbelievable. My nerves were on the edge, even worse than they are right now. But we got on with it. I learned a lot. It was a very memorable time of my life. So after the games, we still had some more things to do. And one of the most memorable was that we all went to Kelvin Grove Art Gallery in Glasgow. We all got on open-top buses, all the athletes, and we were thanking the crowds for such an amazing games. And we're waving to everybody as we went by, and they were all clapping us. And then we finished off on our open-top bus right outside the City Chambers building, which ironically is now where I've been part of the Speakers Club. So I'd like to finish today by asking all our MSPs to please encourage coaches and clubs for all disabled people to take part in sport. Maybe they don't all want to do it for competition reasons, but they will probably want to do it for fun. However, I'm on the track to Tokyo.
Laura, thank you again. Another inspirational story, and one with a punchy message at the end, which I'm sure will not have been wasted on any of my MSP colleagues. I'm quite glad my wife's not here, though. She's a keen cyclist. She'd have me in the back of the tandem, which I don't fancy at all. So, but thank you very much. Can I now ask Matthew Clark to make his way to the lectern? Matthew studied in New College, Worcester, before moving to the University of Glasgow. And in fact, Matthew is familiar with the Parliamentary campus, I believe, having worked for Liam MacArthur, MSP, as part of Inclusion Scotland's We Can Work internship programme from January to May earlier this year. Matthew.
Good morning and thank you, Presiding Officer, members, guide dogs, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to speak to you today about dreams for parity, equality that I feel in myself and feel here in the Scottish Parliament. This Scottish Parliament that is built, would you believe, on a brownfield brewery site and is now a place of reasoned and sober debate. Reasoned and sober debate that for Scotland has been its dreams coming true. Scotland reaching its fullest potential, having a stronger voice, deciding its destiny day after day after day. Dreams that there can be so much better things than being governed by one Department of State or debated over by a parliament so very far away as London. Coming here earlier this year as an intern, as mentioned by Ken McIntosh on Inclusion Scotland's We Can Work internship programme, I believed that after such a very long journey in my life, my dreams to live in parity with my non-disabled peers, to finally accomplish that state of finding employment, might come true, just as Scotland's dreams came true in this Parliament. Alas, I found these dreams harder to grasp than I thought they might or should be. So, accomplishing these dreams, it involves overcoming a statistic for me, overcoming a statistic that has overshadowed my entire adolescent life. I remember being really quite scared at school when I learnt that 3/4 of people registered blind are out of work, living on social security alone. I dreamed that with my hard work, surely I would be able to become one of that lucky quarter to secure permanent work, that surely just working hard, just knowing to speak up for myself would be enough, thinking that there must be some difference in those 3 quarters that was within their control. No. Too often, opportunity is taken out of our control. I have been partially sighted since birth with a rare inherited condition known as Leber's congenital amaurosis. It gives me a level of sight that I like to compare to a very small 1950s television. The colour is rubbish, the definition is rubbish, and for it to work you need a heck of a lot of light in front of the camera, otherwise there's just nothing there at all. Coming so far as I have in life to today is due to overcoming a lot of challenges and barriers along the way, and credit for that first and foremostly lies with my parents, my father, who is here today, included. When I was born and diagnosed 6 months later, they went above and beyond, searching far and wide, proactively seeking support and guidance to make sure that I was habilitated fully towards independence in ways that are not offered and shared with parents by default. They may not have the time to find these things out. They may not have the money to be able to spend on the travelling and the journey to research that. Luckily, my parents were able to do this, and that helped them not to give in to obvious feelings, to perhaps cotton wool a child. When I was 4 and I could not see the sea and fell off a jetty into it, they did not stop me. Well, they tried. Failed, obviously. Luckily, I had started swimming lessons. Good investment. Not when I walked away and could not see to easily find them did they say that I had to be attached to them by a held hand, or even, as you see some children on these, reins. And not when I ran off and ran headlong into concrete bollards did they stop me either, and I'm glad they didn't. Later, we had to fight a narrow-minded local education authority to win the right to the education that we chose and believed that was the right education for me. That was a specialist special school for the visually impaired in New College, Worcester, somewhat similar to the Royal Blind School here in Edinburgh. What I was able to gain there was not only access, full access to the national curriculum, but the extra provision of an independent living skills programme, the most wonderful social life experience that every child should have during school. And with all of this, I went from a less than confident average student to confidently winning an election to be head boy in my final year. And that, to me, told me the sort of potential that I could hope to reach. That successful journey helped me next to travel to the finest city in the world, Glasgow. I'm really sorry, Edinburgh. Even at Glasgow University, there were shadows of inequality, sadly, and this started most scarily with one of my first university lecturers. He profited writing and publishing and selling his own textbook to the class, but he believed I'd sit at the back with all my pals where I can't see him, but he thought I'd sit there and sell this book to them all and profit as if I didn't want to learn. I was left behind on that first university course and struggled to truly ever catch up and feel like I could reach my fullest potential in university. In my career since university and beyond university, I've enjoyed so many wonderful ups and suffered so many challenges equally, and keeping going when there might be another challenge out of my control around the corner is so very, very difficult. I suffered such a challenge on my internship here at the Scottish Parliament. The government programme that is designed to create equality in the workplace, the Department for Work and Pensions Access to Work programme, gave us utter disservice. Administrative errors and delays and an inflexibility to help even when they realised they had done wrong meant that my reasonable adjustments here were never fully put into place. And this meant though I had tried so hard to achieve this internship, I struggled to do my job day to day, and I struggled with my confidence, and I struggled with my well-being also. And that led me to struggle to secure ongoing employment here, and to struggle to secure ongoing employment since then also. I hope that within the next week, funnily enough with 2 job interviews, that this might begin to change. What I dream of is living in a world where disability doesn't mean there are things out of our control that control our potential for success in life. And what keeps me going for all these challenges is the wonderful people alongside me who support me, encourage me, and inspire me. And what inspires me to keep going, that there will be a future where we can more easily, more equally reach our potential, is the fact that, as in the Scottish Parliament here, dreams for a better tomorrow can and do come true.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed, not just telling us a story, but sharing with us your dreams and ambitions. And you're right. Many people think of the Parliament as a place of argument, but actually it's a place for dreams and ambitions and hopes to be realised. So thank you very much for that. And whatever your intentions, I warmed to your parents. I like the way they brought you up there. I'm known as Danger Dad at home. So we'll now hear from Michelle Young, who has returned to Glasgow after living in Canada and travelling the wider world. Michelle keeps herself very busy as a competitive swimmer, rower, and started Scotland's first competitive goalball team. Michelle.
Good morning, Presiding Officer, ladies and gentlemen. I have the dubious honour of being the last of the young speakers to speak. I have to share with you my favourite part of this course before we go any further, and that is being referred to as a young speaker. Stephen very kindly allowed me to take part in this course when one of the original young speakers wasn't able to fully participate. And over the course of the last 3 months, because we had a summer break for the European 2018 Championships, I have been privileged and honoured to be part of the group. I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about what everyone has spoken about before me. I'm going to talk to you about how habilitation and rehabilitation get us to where we need to be. And I'm going to talk to you about that statistic that Matthew mentioned of more than 75% of blind and visually impaired people who are of working age and are not working. And I'm going to share a little bit about my personal experience with you. The presiding officer kindly said that I am a competitive swimmer. That was in my teens and my heydays. I can barely remember that far back. But yes, I did swim for Team GB and spent many weekends ploughing up and down the pools in Edinburgh, Glenrothes, because back then we didn't have Tollcross, a 50-metre pool in Glasgow, so we did have to come east. I took up rowing, and again in my 20s took up rowing, and again was selected for para development. So something was in there sporty, but I think I'm a lover than a competitor and didn't quite cut it. The goalball is something I'm very proud of. And the goalball I'm very proud of for a number of reasons. Because as Laura told you all, having the opportunity to compete is something that often blind and visually impaired people are not provided with routinely. Matthew talked about habilitation. Many of you who are familiar with the visual impairment world will hear rehabilitation. But what we need to become successful members of society, fully participating members of Scotland, the United Kingdom, is habilitation. If, like me, you are born congenitally blind or visually impaired. If you lose your sight later in life, like others on our panel, then you need rehabilitation, and it's important that we understand the differences between these two. As I said, I was born with congenital cataracts. That's an old person's disease primarily. I then also got glaucoma, another old person's disease. You can see why they picked me for the panel, can't you? You can try on some sim specs to simulate my eye conditions, but I challenge somebody to have lunch with tunnel vision on a buffet. It's great fun. See me later for pro tips. I was very fortunate to be brought up by a young, forward-thinking mother who allowed me to do what I needed to do. I went to mainstream school, I wasn't mollycoddled, and then had the benefit of specialist primary education, 6 people to a class. Everything was possible. Swimming, hockey, netball, rounders in the playground. You've no idea what that looks like with 20 blind kids. You're all pitched like it now, aren't you? And it was amazing. And then suddenly to move to high school. The first specialist support unit in Glasgow, in a mainstream secondary school for visually impaired children. 186 pupils in my year group, 6 to 186 was quite the leap. They didn't have the time to cater everything, but still, being bright, being a bit bolshy, I was able to self-advocate and get to where I needed to be, to get to university, to get through university, to be what would be classed as, I'm doing air quotes, a successful blind person, one of the 25. It's like one of the 45, but no, it's cool. I was very fortunate from the age of 21 to be employed. And then I went to Canada and continued to be employed. And I came back from Canada and have continued to be unemployed. And it's very challenging. I am confident. I travel well. I articulate well. I know how to match my clothes. I know how to use body language to make a point. I know how to engage a person in a conversation even when I can't see them. I know how to make people think I can see pretty well when actually I can only see 5% around a fixed field. That means nothing to most of you. But if you cast your mind back to the Looney Tunes, again, going to go with the TV analogy here, Looney Tunes cartoons at the end have a black screen with a dot, and the circle starts bigger and gets smaller and smaller and smaller until Elmer Fudd sticks his head out. That's basically what my eyesight's doing. So if you imagine clutching your eyelids around a straw, that's about what I see, but nowhere near as clear because of the whole cataracts thing. So that's what I see. So that's how my world looks. That's how my world looks when I attend job interviews and when I conduct myself in every occasion. I want to be employed like most blind people. Sighted people, some sighted people don't want to work and some do, and some blind people want to work and some don't. The trouble is, blind people are missing out on the starter jobs, the Saturday jobs, the working in Superdrug or McDonald's or Asda or the Thistle Hotel, wherever it happens to be, and we miss that level. Blind people are incredibly fortunate to have schemes like Disabled Students Allowance to get them through university, but they are not getting the habilitation that they need. They're not getting the rehabilitation that they need when they lose sight. They need to be given immediate access to services like how to use a long cane, how to use computers, because if the lights go out and you can't use your computer, how in this world can you work? How many of you, can I ask, how many of you right now are sitting on your mobile phones, having a glance at the time, having a skim of your email, not falling behind? Imagine if you don't have the skills to do that, where you're left. I would like to challenge everybody in this room to think about how it would be if they thought about blind and visually impaired people in their day-to-day lives. Can they do more? Can counsellors and MSPs, can you encourage your local community centres to be more inclusive, to integrate more, to figure out what those tandems are actually for and why they should be used? Can you please encourage those university lecturers who write and publish the books to give them to the people who are in the back of the classes, not selling them to their colleagues, but actually just want an electronic copy so that they can read them? That's what we want. I challenge you all to take up my task and to think about how you can improve the lives, can improve access, and help each and every one of us on this panel go from being one of the 75 to one of the 25.
Michelle, thank you very much. And yet again, as with all our contributors so far, I'm just left feeling that I wish all my MSP colleagues could be here to listen to you this morning and to learn how to deliver a confident, even when you're nervous, speech, structured with a political message, and perhaps the most difficult skill of all, the one that we'll give all our eye teeth for, you're all funny as well. Oh, I'm jealous. But I think you all owe a bit of a debt of gratitude to our next speaker, Grace Hendry Nash, who has helped run the course for the Glasgow Speakers Club. Grace worked closely with all the participants in their presentation. She's a retired deputy head teacher, is currently the education director of the Glasgow Speakers Club. And for those of you who don't know, the Glasgow Speakers Club is a not-for-profit organisation that aims to promote effective speaking and communication and works with members to advance their skills at their own pace. And the club has held an annual public speaking competition since 1956. So, yes, I can see you all signing up to join in. And Grace, I'd like to thank you and ask you to speak to us this morning.
Presiding officer, ladies and gentlemen, how do you follow those speakers? No pressure, Grace. But standing here today in Edinburgh, I would like to mention that the Glasgow Speakers Club is the oldest speaking club in the United Kingdom. I have heard there's a wee club now in Edinburgh. We were formed in 1937 as the Glasgow Toastmasters Club and later became one of the founding clubs in the Association of Speakers Clubs. For several years, some of our members have delivered training to Glasgow councillors. Our team are all here today, including Dennis Barr, Margaret Cowie, John MacArthur, Graham McLachlan, Kyle Murter, Frank O'Neill and Jackie Stewart. We had more fun and satisfaction working with this group than with the councillors. But I didn't say that. It's fake news, and some of them have been good enough to come today. At first, I wasn't sure how to explain to these young adults that in the association, we don't talk about politics, religion, or sex. But after I'd plucked up the courage, they didn't riot or rebel. They found lots of other topics. Once we met as a group, we had no fear about delivering the skills. From the first meeting, everyone was helpful, everyone was friendly, and we all learned from each other. We had a common goal: improving confidence and developing public speaking skills. We did have to rethink the course and learn what worked and what wasn't important. In the club, we used coloured lights to signal time. Now, that wouldn't work for our group, so instead we used a bell. That caused havoc in the city chambers where we meet for the civic officers. They were running up and down the corridor to answer the bell on the security door, but there was nobody there. Eventually they realised it was us in one of the rooms. We club members have learned a great deal. We fell in love with Pixie the guide dog, and we heard about the long waiting lists and long procedures involved in training guide dogs. We were in absolute awe of Michelle's use of echolocation. She was able to describe the room we were in, down to the walls having flock wallpaper on the top and wooden panelling below. In a speech on the subject, she demonstrated the click she uses. As chairman, I struggled to stop our club members immediately all trying to click for themselves. They were actually clucking. Now, it's been mentioned that we had 8 sessions. That was actually only 16 hours shared amongst all of them. Many of our club members, including myself, have been boring our families for a lifetime with practicing our speeches. So I want to warn their families, they now have that to look forward to. Sadly, not all of our participants could be here today. A couple of them are having medical treatments. This is disappointing because you're missing a speech which highlights the issue of sight loss as an adult, resulting in a cascade of loss of career, loss of income, loss of home, loss of self-esteem, leading to mental health issues. Prior to the training, few of us had had the opportunity to meet many visually impaired people. After a few sessions, one of our team, Graham McLachlan, said to me, I now see visually impaired people as I move around the city. And that summed up my experience. Stephen and I travelled by train to the Parliament. That was an eye-opener for me, and I chose those words. People rushing for trains, pulling their wheelie cases. If you can't see them, you can't get out their way, and you get your feet run over or you get tripped up. The next time you're standing at a pedestrian crossing, put your hand under the box where the button is, and you'll find a little cone which rotates when the green light comes on. Check out how many are broken or just not there. Check out if there's a raised patch on the pavement where you cross the road and what the condition is. Now, I only learned these things from going around the city with Stephen. I was totally unaware. At the cash machine, the small pieces of plastic which have been put round to hide your PIN number from prying eyes, unfortunately make it more difficult for visually impaired people to use the keypad and more difficult to get the money out. The examples are endless. These young adults are a tiny sample of the 2 million Britons who are living with sight loss. That's around 1 in 30 people. Of these, around 360,000 are registered as blind or partially sighted. These are people who are capable, have individual skills and talents, and are hindered or stopped from fulfilling their lives because we don't remove unnecessary impediments. Why can't they find worthwhile employment? Because we don't try hard enough to make it possible. We can't see beyond their impairment. We've heard that 75% of partially sighted people of working age are unemployed. With severe sight loss, that rises to 90%. Presiding officer, ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Sutherland made his way to the USA despite his visual impairment. More recently, he went to South Africa and worked with visually impaired children there. He had the idea to provide this speaking course for others. He pushed this project from start to finish. He was far-sighted enough to imagine them coming here to this special place to speak. He refused to be beaten by any obstacles. I suggest that Stephen Sutherland has vision, and you can hear and see the results of it today. But, presiding officer, ladies and gentlemen, do you and I have that kind of vision?
Grace, thank you very much indeed. A very powerful message there, impeccably delivered to end with. We're now going to have a question and answer session. It is Parliament, and our 4 contributors, and as well as Stephen and Grace, are now going to turn into the First Minister and the government to receive questions. Don't worry. But if I could ask all of you to put your thinking caps on for any questions you'd like to put, and just raise your hand if you want to catch my eye. And I'm going to start with the first question. And I wonder just, Stephen, given that you organised this, whether I could just ask you, first of all, to describe some of the challenges you faced with taking part in a public speaking course and the route that led you here today.
Challenges. Is this one? Yep. You hear me okay?
That's
yep.
on, yeah.
Yep. Challenges, I would say, for the course. Let me think. I would also say just adapting the course to suit the visually impaired people who were on the course would be the main one. And I think they've handled that extremely well. I think you can see from the speeches today that they've delivered, that they have been confident enough to come to such a prestigious venue and deliver in front of a large audience, which means that the job that Grace and I did initially had worked. I think in terms of the project in its entirety, I don't think there were any, I would say, major challenges, if I'm being honest, because from what I can tell, it's been a massive success. And it's been credit to Grace, credit to the RNIB and the Glasgow Speakers Club for putting this together.
Thank you, Stephen. Perhaps, Michelle, I wonder if I could just ask you just about public speaking in your daily life. Is it something that you're called upon to do in your work life, for example?
In my work life, yes, I do have to do a lot of public speaking. Before I moved abroad, I was an engagement officer for guide dogs, so quite often I would be in front of very large groups of corporate voluntary organisations. And one of the things I was, like Stephen, famous for was speaking too quickly. When Anis came to our session in Glasgow, he said, when you're a Glaswegian, you could probably say it in 5 words, but a Glaswegian will take 26 and say it in half the time. And one of the things I really wanted to improve on was slowing down. Now that I'm job hunting, I'm being asked to do a lot of presentations, and lots of the tips that I've been given by the speakers have really, really helped with the presentations, and I get a lot of compliments on my presentation, so thanks to all the speakers for that.
Thank you, Michelle. Before moving on to some of the political aspects, I wonder if I could start with Asif, actually. 3 of the panellists mentioned, and Matthew, you might be including this, but 3 of the panellists mentioned sport and how important sport was to them. I'm just struck that 3 of you picked on that aspect. Why is it so important to you, Asif?
Well, it's like, for example, like judo is really important to me. It gives me more confidence and more, I think it's just about more confidence it gives you, you know what I mean? Like, to fight with your opponent or make you more independent. It takes that fears away from you. I used to be really shy and really nervous. When I started running and doing judo, I think it gave me so much confidence. And I realized me like I can do anything I want to, but I just need the support with it.
Indeed. And Laura, too, not many will have taken their participation in sport to the level you have. But again, is there a parallel there between, is this whole idea of overcoming challenges, overcoming obstacles? Is there something there that has inspired you to take on the challenges of public speaking too?
Yeah, well, I think the parallel of able-bodied sport to para-sport is not really very parallel, I would say. There's still a lot to be done to get to the level of able-bodied support. But it is getting better. Even since I've started, there's a lot more happening now. Since I first went to that session that I spoke about earlier at the Velodrome, I've now left a legacy, and they've got 2 para sessions a week, and they've contacted lots of schools, and there's lots of kids going to that. And I wanted to learn the skills of public speaking, because sometimes as an athlete you're asked to speak at things and I'm not always, sure of what to say and how to say it and always how to finish it. So it was just to learn the skills and learn some more, get some more confidence.
Well, I think you've demonstrated that. And Matthew, I'm going to put the first political question to you because you've had a few months here. All 4 speakers had a political message one way or another. How difficult is it for the visually impaired community to get that message across here in the Scottish Parliament or in Scotland generally?
It's funny you ask that, because tomorrow there is a meeting of the Parliament's cross-party group on visual impairment, so you should all go. The shortbread is really good. I think we're comparatively lucky in Scotland as a part of the UK. Scotland having a young parliament, but a parliament that has comparatively gotten more powers than Wales and Northern Ireland, means that I do believe there is a better level of engagement. Having experience living in a different part of the UK, having been raised originally in the south-east of England in Surrey, then going to New College, Worcester, that's obviously in Worcestershire, West Midlands of England, I've experienced both situations. I do believe Scotland has a sort of economies of scale as a political landscape for representation and engagement and advocacy, as RNIB Scotland and other charities who support people living with sight loss do very well. And the Scottish Parliament is very open to engaging different audiences. That is a great start. It does not mean that everything is perfect, however. I touched on a few issues in my speech in the choice on education, having the choice between mainstream education. It's not always as good in all areas. There is discussion on the cross-party group at the moment about the numbers of specialist qualified teachers for the visually impaired in Scotland. And does everybody know about the specialist options that are there? Not necessarily. I'm not trying to say that things are wrong or right, but these are questions that are difficult, but are so important, because if the right action, if the right choice for a young person like me growing up with sight loss isn't made, then that affects their future. And again, as I touched on in my speech, I believe that the power of the Parliament that we have here in Scotland creates a lot of potential for improvement of many of these opportunities as well.
Thank you. So just to our audience, anybody in our audience here wish to ask a question? Yes, gentleman there.
I'm John MacArthur, Glasgow Speakers Club. This is for any of the panel. Do you have any advice? Do you have any advice that you would like to give to young people just coming out of school looking for a job?
Now, if anyone wants to answer that, just raise your arm and Grace will give you the microphone. Oh, there are two volunteers immediately.
Get Michelle first, and then I can hopefully come to you.
Any young person, whether they are experiencing any kind of disability, sight loss, or 16 coming out of school after your standard grades or after doing your full 6 years, I would say get involved in volunteering, and as soon as you can, and volunteer for something that you feel really passionately about. I'm quite a positive. I feel really passionately about volunteering and how enriching it can be for young people, for people of any ages, for increasing confidence, for giving you skills that you wouldn't perhaps get in the traditional education system. I would say volunteer and do as much as you possibly can. Say yes to all the opportunities that are open to you or offered to you, and just be open to trying everything.
And Matthew, I think you wanted to add something.
As we have been supported by this public speaking course,
It's just that famous comic microphone turn, isn't it?
yes, it keeps coming on and on.
Oh, is it?
I'm just going to have to project. As we have been taught. We have been taught to be confident speakers on this course, understanding your own sight loss and having ownership over that, being able to self-advocate about your challenges. Thank you. Being able to self-advocate about the challenges you face and the solutions to them, that is the first step towards succeeding in volunteering and or in work, because you can go in, get all the reasonable adjustments sorted more quickly if access to work works, should you need it. That, I think, is a first and most crucial step. For me, something that helped me greatly was knowing lots of organisations, networking, talking, finding opportunities to develop skills when we are unfortunately put behind by our disability. networking, finding every opportunity makes all the difference. At university, I benefited from the structured self-development approach offered by the Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award. That was brilliant and helped me do a lot of my employability development at university. Networking, talking to Inclusion Scotland, meant they knew me, and one of their members of staff dropped me an email when there were applications open for the internships here at Parliament. And he said, Matthew, you might like to apply for this. And I did.
Any other questions from the floor here? Right at the very back there. Right at the very back. Yes, you're going to have to run up and down with that microphone now, I'm afraid.
Hi, thank you very much for the fantastic contribution, the four speakers. And during the speech, I think every one of them mentioned the difficulties in finding work. Could you tell me what you think is the biggest barrier against finding employment for people who are blind or visually impaired?
Excellent question. I have to say, you have to come back up with the microphone as we're... Oh, it's working again, is it?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, is it? All right, okay. So, Asif or Laura or Stephen, would you like to tell us what the barriers to work are? Stephen.
I think finding the right opportunity is certainly key. Because I think one of the speakers had mentioned earlier on that going into a shop and working isn't quite appropriate when you've got limited sight. And I certainly think getting the right opportunity is a real benefit. I think that if employers are more open to employing people with visual impairments, then that's good, because a lot of them think that this will cost them more money, when in actual fact it doesn't need to cost them anything. So it's about being more aware of what's actually involved with living with sight loss, and that they're more aware, educated, and more willing to accept more disabled people into work.
Thank you, Stephen. And any final questions? No final questions? I feel like an auctioneer. Last chance? Oh, actually, there will be other opportunities, hopefully over lunch, to put your questions and to discuss what we've heard this morning with all our contributors. But can I just add my thanks before we move on to the awards, just to say that the figures that you were giving, all of you quoted this idea that only a quarter of all visually impaired people secure employment, is quite remarkable, particularly when we've heard the impressive testimony this morning from all of you, and seen the commitment that you've got, the drive you've got, the sense of overcoming challenges, the competitive spirit, in fact, that's present there too. And I can't help feeling that there are structural challenges in society that we all need to tackle if we're to allow everybody to fulfil their potential. And you've outlined some of that potential this morning. So can I ask all of you to join me in thanking all our guests and all our contributors this morning for their contributions. Now, we move on to the fun part of the day. I'm going to ask, I'm delighted to ask, if I may, my colleague Claire Hockey, MSP, the Minister for Mental Health, to join me to give out the awards to our contributors. Claire, first of all, to say a few words.
Thank you, and what a very, very hard act to follow. And I'm not going to say very much so that I don't show myself up. But congratulations to all of you. It was really impressive to hear how passionate you are about public speaking, and to see the skills that you've obviously developed over the last few years coming to fruition. So I sincerely hope that you continue your public speaking. And I'm sure that the Glasgow Club would be delighted to have you as members. And congratulations to all of you. You should be very proud of what you've achieved.
Claire. I'll ask. So, yes, you stand there. May I ask Asif Khan to come up and join us to receive his award? Now, I see if we have a photographer here, so allow the Minister to... And am I photobombing by mistake here? Should I? Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Can we do that again, Asif? And I'm going to join you, actually. Could I ask Laura Cluxton to join us? I will again. I'm not shy. And now Matthew Clark. And finally, Michelle Young. Now, I believe Stephen has a surprise for everyone at the Glasgow Speakers Club. Stephen has asked me to invite everyone from the Glasgow Speakers Club and Grace to come to the front and collect a certificate as a thank you for all your hard work. So you all come up. Stay up here, we'll do a picture. Andy will organise in the... Well done, thank you. Thank you. That was great. Proud of your handiwork. Yes. No, I think we're going to go to the front. We're all going to step forward.
We're all going to step forward.
Step forward. Right, I think Minister in the middle and Grace in the middle for me. And finally, we have another surprise, and this is for Stephen himself, a certificate to thank him for all his work in putting all this together this morning and the whole chorus. Oh, well. Thank you, Minister, indeed, for joining us this morning and for handing out the awards. And thank you to all our contributors. And now, if I can, I'm going to ask Sandra Wilson, Chair of the RNIB, to join us, as well as holding the position of Chair at the Royal National Institute for Blind People. Sandra is also a Director of Citizens Advice and Rights Fife. Sandra.
Presiding Officer, ladies and gentlemen, we've already had two speakers who've spoken of the pressure they feel under following what we've heard this morning. I'm just wondering how you think I feel now. Stephen began by pointing out the key things that they had been taught in the course at the Glasgow Speakers Club. So I'm going to follow the time-honoured formula of public speaking: stand up, speak up, and shut up. I've done the first, I'll do the second, and then I promise I will do the third. I would like to talk to you about how I think the skills that the people have learned who've been doing these courses over the last few weeks will be of benefit not only to them as individuals, to their audiences, also to RNIB and the wider world in which they can now use their skills. Very briefly, before I do that, just a wee bit of my story. I've been blind from birth. I went to the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh. I am an exiled Glaswegian who now lives in Fife. But as a true Glaswegian, one word against the city, and I promise you, my hackles are right up there. I was so proud during the Commonwealth Games about the job that Glasgow did, but I digress. I went to the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh. I've been blind from birth. I then went on to Edinburgh University, and after a bit, I trained for the Career Service and got a job in Local Authority Careers Guidance. And my career, and I've had an unbroken career, I've been one of the lucky ones, has all been employment-related and employability-related. I'm now retired, which I have to say is the best job I have ever had, and I thoroughly recommend it to everybody. Speaking started for me very early. When I was in Guides, there was a big exhibition in the early 60s, Spotlight on Guiding. And I was asked, in brackets, told by a divisional commissioner that I had to give a vote of thanks to the celebrity who opened this exhibition. That was fine. She wrote it for me. I memorised it. And I set off on the night, only to discover that this lady said not one word that my vote of thanks fitted. Now, to a 14-year-old sitting on a platform with the great and the good, spotlight on her, that was a fairly scary experience. And how I got myself out of that one, I've never been terribly sure. When I started work as a young careers advisor, I found that on the last 2 periods of a Friday afternoon, I was detailed to talk to half the fourth year for one, the other half for the other, on the last 2 periods on a Friday afternoon when they really did want to be there. And I can show you that in the morning of that, my colleagues spent the morning watching over me to make sure I didn't do anything, that I would regret later on. But when I think about speaking, I sometimes think today that we've forgotten how to speak, because we text, we use email, we use instant messaging, we communicate on social media, we don't talk to each other. I'm not saying that the digital technology is bad. Had I had a mobile phone years ago, my friend and I wouldn't have stood on opposite sides of the road for an hour, unable to see each other, wondering where the other one was. And we caught up with each other when she went into the phone box to phone me and see where I was. So it's not all bad. But I don't think there is anything to equal the power, the persuasion, the skill of a really good, confident speaker. And for people with sight loss, it's something that we can do on a level playing field to everyone else. So I would encourage our speakers this morning just to carry on, practice, refine, keep going with it. How do we use it? As individuals, as we've heard, it helps your confidence. It also helps your thought processes and your credibility. When we go to meetings, when you invite questions, there'll always be the first hands up to speak. These people don't always think about what they're going to say. And one of the things that we learn at speakers' clubs as our speeches are being timed is to pause, think, and before you open your mouth, gather your thoughts. What you say will be coherent, it will be well planned, and it will make a much bigger message than somebody who jumps in right away. Audiences still welcome the power of a good speaker. I can remember once having a boss in Fife, and I did not like anything he said, but I could not disagree with the way in which he said it, because he was a brilliant speaker. And when we listen to really good speakers, it sticks with us, and we remember them, and we remember what they've said. Now, for the organisation for RNIB, obviously as chair of RNIB Scotland, I've always got my eye on the main chance. And I'm always thinking about involvement, getting more people involved, getting people to come forward. RNIB needs ambassadors, and that's whether you're networking at a meeting like this, whether you're chatting to somebody on a train, no matter where you are, and if you can use the skills that you've had over the last few weeks, that can make you a more powerful ambassador. We're also always looking for speakers for talking book fundraising, other fundraising, just promoting sight loss, promoting the barriers we face, but most of all to get the message over that sight loss is only one part of our personalities and one part of our makeup. So while many of us in this room today have sight loss, that's only part of us. We're people. We've got the same skills, we've got the same good qualities, we've got the same irritating habits. We can be as big pains in the neck as other people, we can be as good company. Sight loss is only one part of us. I congratulate all our speakers on the work that they've been doing. Keep going, and don't worry, I'll be in touch to make use of the skills that you have gained in the last few weeks. Presiding Officer, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Ending with a threat disguised as a promise. That was good. And now I want to draw this part of the proceedings to a conclusion. And as I said earlier, I was delighted to have been joined by so many political colleagues, as well as the Minister, Gordon Lyndhurst, MSP, and my good friend and colleague, Anas Sarwar, MSP, who also gave up his time, I think, to help with the course. So, Anas, I'd like to invite you to come up and give the vote of thanks.
Presiding Officer, thank you. I realise that I am the only gap between yourself and lunch, so I will not keep you too long. Stephen has very helpfully given me a very long list to say thank you to, but before I do that, can I say thank you to Stephen, because it was a genuine honour and privilege for me to meet with the speakers in advance of today and to share with them some of my own experiences. Although I remember right at the outset of that event, I said to them, look, you don't need to be nervous. It's not really a high bar to pass in the Scottish Parliament in terms of public speaking. I'm sorry, Ken, I shouldn't have said that. But they have done fantastic today, and I think not only are they a huge credit to themselves, their families, to their coaches, but actually they're a huge credit to Scotland. And each and every single one of them would be a powerful advocate in our Scottish Parliament. So a big cheer for all our speakers, please. I'm glad they took my advice of starting with a joke. That was good. I'm glad they didn't take my advice on keeping to time, as the presiding officer would attest to. And also, Michelle is right. I did say about us Glaswegians having to talk that little bit slower. Normally, we have to talk quite a bit slower when we're talking to an Edinburgh audience, but I know there's lots of Glaswegians in the room, so we don't have that worry today. Can I just say a few thank yous of my own? First of all, to Asif. Thank you, Asif, for telling me I had a fantastic Irish accent. That was news to me. Thank you, Matthew, for encouraging us to have reasoned and sober debate. The only thing I can promise to is sober debate. I'm not sure about the reasoned. To Michelle for all the questions, and I can't tell you how many questions Michelle asked me. Michelle asked a hell of a lot of questions, all very good questions, I must say, but a lot of questions. And to Laura. Laura, I think the whole of Scotland will be cheering you on. We cheered you on at the last Commonwealth Games. We'll be cheering you on at the next Commonwealth Games as well. You're an inspiration to each and every single one of us, so thank you. And again, a big cheer for all our speakers. Now for the long list of vote of thanks that Stephen has given me. First of all, to the United States Embassy for providing Stephen with the opportunity to be part of the Joe Cox Memorial Exchange Programme and for the funding opportunity, both of which led to today's event. To Legacy International for putting together the 2-week programme in America, which Stephen took part in, and helping all the young leaders throughout their time in the US. To the Challenge based in London for providing the funding on behalf of the United States Embassy in London, and for the one-day grant writing training course that took place in London. To my good friend and colleague, Councillor John Kane, for helping get a room for the public speaking course at the Glasgow City Chambers. To Glasgow City Council for allowing Stephen's public speaking course to take place at the Glasgow Chambers free of charge. That's a good sign, free of charge. Let's see if that sticks. To the RNIB, a truly fantastic organisation and charity who've helped put this project together. To my good friend, who sadly can't be here today, but has messaged me umpteen times while the event has been going on to make sure it's going okay, and that's James Adams. So thank you to James for allowing this project to go ahead and for giving the full support of RNIB Scotland for it. And he made a point of saying I had to emphasise the thanks to the next two women that I'm going to mention. One, Sandra Wilson, the fantastic chair of RNIB Scotland, a huge inspiration to each and every single one of us. Thank you, Sandra, for joining us today, and thank you for your leadership of RNIB. To Susan Burns of RNIB Connect for all her help with organising the project from start to finish. To the Glasgow Speakers Club, each and every single one of you, too many to name individually, but all of you, thank you so much for your time, for your commitment, and for the passion that you have demonstrated in sharing your expertise and your knowledge. Although I must say, having listened to the four speakers, I think they'll be doing the training in future and we'll be doing the learning. To Grace Henry Nash for helping put together the programme and to facilitate the course, thank you for your passion and your energy. You've done the training programme for the speakers today, you've done a training programme for the councillors. Perhaps the presiding officer will facilitate you to come and do a training programme for us here in the Parliament. To Douglas Miller for all his efforts in organising today's events with Stephen, Susan and Grace. To the Minister Claire Hockey for providing her valuable time and handing out the certificates. And second last, to the presiding officer, who was a fantastic chair, kept us all to time, kept us in discipline. He does that often. So we can get a big cheer for the presiding officer. And thank you in advance for the tour and also the tour you will do of the debating chamber. But all that's left for me to say is a thank you to a person who is a truly inspiring individual, someone who is of great vision, as Grace said earlier, someone who, thanks to him, I've had an absolutely eye-opening and inspiring morning here in the Scottish Parliament. Someone with a huge, huge, huge future ahead of him, and that's Stephen Sutherland. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. One last thing. Douglas, could you bring Stephen? I think has got a little gift to give to Grace. Stephen, if you could stand up. There we are. Thank you very much. Now, I'm moving away from the microphone. Thank you very much, everybody. Now, I believe that lunch is going to be served in here, but before that, if I could ask you, well, that's if you wish, to join me. We're going to go through the debating chamber is just through the doors through there. So if you can join me, we'll make our way to the debating chamber, and then you can, we'll have a look, take some pictures, ask some questions if you wish, and we'll take a few minutes in there. And on the way back, if you could then maybe have a look at those who wish to try on the sim glasses that RNIB have brought, and we'll benefit from that. So thank you very much, and follow me out of the building.